This is the training using the Gain Short Screener. This was funded through Project Freshlight, Department of Health Services, in collaboration with the Department of Public Instruction and Wisconsin Family Ties. I'm Erin Triplett.
And I'm Heather Sweet.
And we're here from Chestnut Health Systems, the creator of the Gain SS, to help you learn to use this valuable tool. At the end of this session, you'll be able to administer the Gain Short Screener to participants or clients, score and interpret the Gain SS, and use the Wisconsin Family Ties Gain SS website. If you have the opportunity, now would be a great time to print out the Gain Short Screener, blank, and the Gain SS manual that were linked right underneath this presentation. The Gain SS is a 3 to 5 minute screener used in general populations to identify clients with behavioral health disorders and to rule out those who don't have them. It's easy to use, best for staff minimal training or little direct supervision. It does provide a simple measure of change. It can be done self-administered by clients or staff-administered, and it can be done with paper and pen or on a computer. We also have the Gain SS available in other languages, including Spanish, if that's something that would be valuable at your site.
Now we're going to go ahead and tour the instrument. As Erin mentioned before, you may want to follow along with the blank short screener instrument itself so that we can go through each of the 4 screeners. The first of which is the internalizing disorder screener. The second one is the externalizing disorder screener. The third is the substance disorder screener, and the final screener is the crime and violence disorder screener. All 4 of these screeners comprise the total disorder screener. The reason why we're going to go through each screener and then tour the instrument is so at the end of this presentation, when we score the instrument, it's easy to find where these items are going to be scored and how we're going to be scoring them and find the information that we need. The first screener is the internalizing disorder screener. You want to follow along. It's the first group of questions in the screener. And these questions are all going to be problems related to depression, anxiety, and possibly suicide that may come up for your clients or your participants. The second disorder screener is the externalizing disorder screener. And these group of questions are going to be related to disorders like attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity, and possibly conduct problems. The third disorder screener is the substance disorder screener, and these questions are going to look at use, abuse, and dependence of substances. The fourth crime and violence screener, these questions are going to look at crime and interpersonal crime and violent crime as well with your clients. The last group of items within the screener are grouped under other items. The first question, number 5, is looking at any other significant or psychological, behavioral, or personal problems that your clients may be experiencing and that they can offer any additional information. And then the last 2 questions are basically getting some background information on your client, gender and their age. Now we're going to be looking at how to administer the tool itself. Again, if you want to make any notes, feel free to go ahead and make those directly on the assessment that you've been following along with. Pull out my notes. Okay. First, you may want to get informed consent for administration of the assessment. Informed consent must be obtained in order to administer the Gain Short Screener to a student. A parent or a guardian must also give written permission for a minor student, and an adult student must give written permission for him or herself. There are some student privacy issues that we want to address. The Wisconsin law grants privileged communication to any student who self-discloses use of alcohol or other drugs. A pupil services professional may not disclose information unless one of these 3 rules apply: that the student gives written permission, there is serious imminent danger, and/or a report must be made for suspected abuse or neglect under Chapter 48. Additionally, the portions of the results of the Gain Short Screener related to alcohol or other drugs may not be disclosed to parents unless circumstances provided for in the law apply. On to additional administration guidelines. these are some general rules that you may want to adhere to rather closely. First, you want to ask the items exactly as they're printed. You want to explain words or phrases that are needed. Initially, you want to read each item as it's printed. If your client or your participant has some difficulty understanding the vocabulary, you can go ahead and clarify that a little bit further afterwards. You want to ask each and every item. You want to ask each item and read it completely. You want to repeat items that are misunderstood. If your clients have questions about the vocabulary, again, of course you can repeat them and then clarify them a little further. You want to read items in an appropriate pace. You don't want to read something too fast or too slow. You don't want to suggest answers. Even though you may have a little bit of information about your clients, you want their information to be a self-report. So you want to ask the items as they're printed and wait for your client's response. And ultimately, you want to use your own common sense. Your expertise in this area supersedes everything else, and it's a good thing to always have in your back pocket is your common sense. In preparation for administering the gain short screener, you'll want to find a quiet, private place. You want to consider using the cognitive impairment screener if you suspect intoxication or mental problems. Now, in the gain short screener manual that you can print out, thanks, Aaron. You want to read the introduction as well as possibly administer the check for cognitive impairment. You want to develop individualized anchors with the clients. And if the gain short screener is self-administered, you want to ask the clients if they want your help. We'll get into each of these in a little bit more detail in a couple slides. Primarily, when we're looking at the check for cognitive impairment, this helps you, the staff, verify the participant's ability to locate him or herself in place and time. On page 5 in the manual, it gives a detailed account of how and when to use the check for cognitive impairment. Also, on the back page of the manual, there's a tear-off section that will walk you through, on page 6 of the manual, there's a clear-cut check for cognitive impairment that you can actually administer to your clients. The interview would ideally be rescheduled if there was a temporary problem, for instance, intoxication or inability to score low on the check for cognitive impairment. If you do continue with the interview, despite problems, you want to make sure that you orally administer the screener to your client. You also note the client's problems in the staff use box, and then you want to avoid over-interpreting the results. Like I mentioned before, you want to develop some personalized anchors with your clients so that they can place themselves in space and time and that they have some salient reference points when you're asking about certain items that ask in the past month, 2 to 12 months ago, 1+ years ago. Anchors are life events that help clients distinguish between these time periods that we just referenced. And there's also instructions for anchoring that are included in the Gain Short Screener manual. Again, that's the last page of your manual. It's also a tear-off sheet up at the top. When you're introducing the Gain Short Screener, you want to explain why you, the interviewer, need to ask these questions. You want to give a purpose and some generalization as to why you're sitting down with your client and asking these questions. You want to address the confidentiality and exceptions to confidentiality or privacy issues. You want to describe how the client's answers will be used for future purposes. You want to mention how long the assessment will take, and then again, you'll always want to use common sense when introducing the assessment. With the instructions, let's go back. Also, with introducing the Gain Short Screener, if you want a guideline as to how to introduce the Gain Short Screener, again, in the back of the manual, there's,
The very last page.
The very last page of the manual, there is a tear-off section that will walk you through the introduction. You want to complete the header up at the top of the instrument. There's a box just underneath that header on the front page of the instrument that will be an introductory paragraph, and you want to remember to read that paragraph. You want to read each item carefully. You don't want to skip items. You want to choose only one response per item. You want to read the stem at the beginning of each section. You don't want to accept sometimes, sort of, or maybe answers. You want to accept only answers that are on the screener. You want to clearly mark any corrections. You want to write verbatim responses very neatly. Let your clients know it's okay to ask questions, and review the form for completion or accuracy. So completing the staff use box. The first site, the first area is item 8. You want to include your site ID. These are going to be created by your agency. Your staff ID is also going to be created by your agency. Your site name, you want to include just a verbatim response. You want to write in your site name and your staff name as well. Client ID is a numerical representation for your client. Again, your agency will provide this information for you. For item 11, you're going to record the mode of administration, whether you, the interviewer, administered, so you'd circle administered by staff. If a parent or someone else administered the assessment, it'd be administered by other, or if the client themselves administered the assessment, it'd be self-administered. Items 12 are the numbers of 2s and 3s, and this is for scoring purposes throughout each of the screeners, and Erin's going to get into a little bit more detail about that a little later in the presentation. Item 13 is that if it's applicable, this is where you're going to check where the client is being referred, whether it's a mental health or a substance abuse or anger management. And item 14, you're going to record the primary program code of the place where the client is being referred using the project or agency specific codes. So these would be numerical codes that you would have represented for each of those areas. And then ultimately in the last portion of it, your referral comments would just be verbatim responses that you would include. This slide here gives a breakdown of each of those areas within the staff use box so that you can reference that a little bit more clearly. Okay. And I'll turn it over to Erin.
Thank you, Heather. The administration of the Gain Chart Screener is pretty basic, and so is the scoring. So if math is not your thing, do not feel stressed out about it. This is literally counting up numbers, so we can all handle that. There are 2 types of scores in the Gain SS. The first is the domain or subscreener score. So you remember back when Heather was going through the tour, she talked about the internalizing disorder screener, the externalizing disorder screener, etc. The domain score is the score for each one of those individually. The total score, just like it sounds like, is the score for the entire screener. For domain scoring, you count the number of symptoms the client endorses in the past year. So that means, looking at a completed screener, you're counting up the numbers of 2s and 3s that are circled in each subscreener. Since there are 5 questions in each subscreener, the maximum score for each of those is 5. If you add those 4 together, you get the total score. Once you have those scores determined, you should record them in the staff use box, which is number 12, as Heather mentioned. Once you have the scores complete, we divide these into 3 separate categories. Someone with a low score, or a 0, is unlikely to have a diagnosis if given further assessment. Someone with a moderate score, or a 1 or a 2, would possibly have a diagnosis if they were given some further assessment or intervention. And someone with a high score, which would be 3 to 5 on a subscreener, or 3 to 20 on the total disorder screener, has a very high likelihood of a diagnosis if you were to delve further into their problems. To show you a little bit more about what we've learned, we're going to do a demo where Heather is going to be Amber, a teenage client, and I'm going to be completing the Gain SS. This would be a wonderful time to take out your blank screener, follow along, record Amber's responses, because after this we're going to score it together. While you're watching, pay attention to some of the more detailed parts that we weren't able to go over quite as thoroughly. The introduction, listen to what elements I'm including. Watch how we establish the anchors. listen to how I read the questions and how I clarify Amber's responses, because as you probably know from working with clients, working with students, they're going to have questions about things, and that's a completely normal part of doing the screener. So if you're ready, grab a pen and let's get started. Hi Amber, how's it going?
It's great.
Okay, well thanks for coming in today. This should only take a few minutes. We'll try and get you in and out as soon as we can, and if at any point you have questions, just let me know.
Okay.
This instrument is designed to find out how you're doing in terms of your mental health and behavior. It takes about 5 minutes to answer.
All right, cool.
The information is private and will be used only for your treatment and to help us evaluate our own services. If you're not sure about an answer, just give me your best guess. If you don't know an answer to a question, you can tell me that, and I'll enter DK for don't know. You can also refuse to answer any question you don't want to answer, and I'll enter RF for that item.
All right.
Ask me if you don't understand a question or a word, or you want me to repeat something. And at the end of the interview, I'll check to make sure everything's complete and answer any additional questions you have for me.
All right.
Any questions at all before we get started?
You said it's going to take like 5 minutes?
About 5 minutes.
All right,
yeah.
that's cool.
Okay. So the first thing we need to do is do a little something to help us get these time frames straight. These questions are going to ask you about things that may have happened during the past month, 2 to 12 months ago, or more than 12 months ago. To help you remember these time periods, we're going to take a look at this calendar here.
All right.
Okay. So we are right here. We're looking at a month ago. Okay, so do you recall anything that was going on about October 7th or 30 days ago?
No?
Okay, this could be anything at all, something that was going on at school or with your family. Maybe you went to a sporting event or a party, anything cool that happened with a job or...
Oh, well, we did just get a new puppy. My neighbor their dog had a litter and we got a puppy.
Okay, and when was that?
That was on the 6th, actually.
Okay.
It was right after that weekend.
Okay, so if we said when you got a new puppy, would that help you remember the
Yeah.
past month? Okay.
That'd be good.
So if the last time something happened was since you got that puppy, just answer past month.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and write it in here so you can look at this when you're answering questions. Now, do you recall anything that was going on about 12 months ago or November 7th of last year?
I think that was homecoming week. And I went to homecoming, the dance on the 10th.
Okay. So if we said homecoming dance, that would help you remember last year.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to write that in as well. If the last time something happened was between when you got the puppy and when you went to homecoming, tell me that it was 2 to 12 months ago. And if it happened before you went to homecoming, tell me that it was 1 or more years ago. Does that
Okay.
seem- okay. And I can always remind you of those choices. And if
Okay.
something never happened, you just tell me never.
Okay.
So some of the questions that I asked, you might have never happened to you, and that's okay.
All right,
So
that's
you
cool.
can go ahead and take a look at that.
Oh, thanks.
Okay. Any questions?
No, I don't
Okay.
think so.
I'm going to go ahead and get started then. The following questions are about common psychological, behavioral, or personal problems. These problems are considered significant when you have them for 2 or more weeks, when they keep coming back, when they keep you from meeting your responsibilities, or when they make you feel like you can't go on. After each of the following statements, please tell us the last time you had this problem, if ever, by responding in the past month or since you got your puppy, 2 to 12 months ago, so between the puppy and the homecoming dance, 1 or more years ago, so before homecoming, or never.
Okay.
When was the last time you had significant problems with feeling very trapped, lonely, sad, blue, depressed, or hopeless about the future?
What did you say was in the, past month? Is that an option?
Past month,
Okay,
2
yeah.
to 12 months ago,
Past month.
past month. With sleeping, such as bad dreams, sleeping restlessly, or falling asleep during the day.
Past month.
With feeling very anxious, nervous, tense, fearful, scared, panicked, or like something bad was going to happen.
That was longer ago.
Okay, so longer ago, like before homecoming.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had said before homecoming was 1 or more years ago.
Yeah,
Is that
that
right?
one.
Okay. When was the last time you had significant problems when something reminded you of the past and you became very distressed and upset?
In the past month.
Okay. With thinking about ending your life or committing suicide?
Never.
When was the last time you did the following things 2 or more times? Lied or conned to get things you wanted or to avoid having to do something?
Never.
Had a hard time paying attention at school, work, or home?
Never.
Had a hard time listening to instructions at school, work, or home?
Never.
Were a bully or threatened other people?
I don't do that.
Okay, so if we had to say never 1 more years ago.
Oh, sorry, never.
Started fights with other people?
Never. Mm-mm.
When was the last time you used alcohol or drugs weekly?
What does that mean?
Like at least once a week you used alcohol or drugs the last time that happened. You could have used it more than once each week, but the last time it was at least once each week.
That's past month.
Okay. You spent a lot of time either getting alcohol or drugs, using alcohol or drugs, or feeling the effects of alcohol or drugs like feeling high or feeling sick afterwards.
Past month.
You kept using alcohol or drugs even though it was causing social problems, leading to fights, or getting you into trouble with other people.
Never.
Your use of alcohol or drugs caused you to give up, reduce, or have problems at important activities at work, school, home, or social events.
Never.
You had withdrawal problems from alcohol or drugs like shaking hands, throwing up, having trouble sitting still or sleeping, or that you used any alcohol or drugs to stop being sick or avoid withdrawal problems.
Never.
Okay, we're about halfway there.
Okay.
After each of the following statements, please tell us the last time you had this problem, if ever, by again responding in the past month, 2 to 12 months ago, 1 or more years ago, or never.
Okay.
When was the last time you had a disagreement in which you pushed, grabbed, or shoved someone?
It's more than a month ago.
Okay. Do you think it's 2 to 12 months? So like between
Yes,
the dog
2 to
and the
12
dance?
months.
Okay. When was the last time you took something from a store without paying for it?
Never.
Sold, distributed, or helped to make illegal drugs?
Never.
Drove a vehicle while under the influence of alcohol or illegal drugs?
Never.
Purposely damaged or destroyed property that did not belong to you?
Never.
Do you have any other significant psychological, behavioral, or personal problems you want treatment for or help with?
No.
Help with. It could be anything. Nothing?
No. No.
Okay. And what is your gender?
I'm female.
And how old are you today, Amber?
I'm 15.
Okay. Okay. Any questions at all for me?
No.
Okay. Then we're done. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
As you can see, this was kind of an ideal scenario just so we could show you the best way to do it. It's okay if you spend more time doing more clarification and answering more questions in the real world. If you have it all complete, we're going to move on and talk about scoring in a little more detail so you get some practice in. You'll notice, and we have it up on the screen here, in the very first sub-screener, the internalizing disorder screener, Amber reported experiencing 3 problems in the past month. Those are highlighted in yellow. 1 or more years ago, and 1 never. Because we only count past year symptoms, we only count those 3s when we're scoring. Since 3 3s were coded, the score is 3. So if you look at this just as counting up a number from 1 to 5, not adding together the number that you circled. Using that same principle, let's go over Amber's total score. For the internalizing disorder screener, we already said she got a 3. For externalizing, it was 0. Substance disorder screener was 2. Crime and violence screener was 1, and that means a total of 6. Once you have a score in place, it's time to do the interpretation part. So the whole reason you do this is to get information that helps you make referrals that can get the person you're working with the best assistance they need. Someone with a high score, so again, 3 to 20 on the total disorder screener or a 3 to 5 on one of the sub-screeners, will likely have a diagnosis when given the full GAIN-I or another biopsychosocial assessment or further assistance through a behavioral health system. Using scores in the moderate range, a 1 or 2, or high range, 3 to 5, in sub-screener helps you target what kind of behavioral health service they need. For example, if they had a high score of 5 on the total disorder screener, and they had high scores or moderate scores in the internalizing and externalizing, you know that they probably need some mental health treatment over, say, substance use treatment. A moderate or high score on the internalizing disorder screener suggests, just like Heather mentioned, problems related to depression, anxiety, somatic complaints, and other serious mental illness. You should note when you're looking at this, it is only a screener, so these are not diagnoses, and it's not targeting a specific issue. When you do this, it just points to their needing assistance in this area in general. For the externalizing disorder screener, a moderate or high score would suggest need for mental health treatment related to attention deficit or hyperactivity, conduct disorder, gambling, or other impulsivity issues. On the substance disorder screener, just like Heather mentioned, we're talking use, abuse, dependence here, and a moderate or high score to indicate they do need some kind of further assistance in this area. For the crime and violence screener, this is looking for problems related to interpersonal violence, drug-related or violent crime, and possibly anger management issues along those lines. You can also use the short screener as a simple measure of change in behavioral health over time. So if you look at the past month, and you were to do this with the same person every month, you could count up the number of past month problems and see how that was fluctuating from month to month. This is a nice handy graph to show you how this can be used. You'll notice we're looking at the total disorder screener for the same individual at an interval of 3 months. Every 3 months, we gave them the same screener. And the numbers up the side, we're looking at the number of problems in the total disorder screener. The colors correspond to each of the different time frames. So black is past month, gray is 2 to 12 months ago, and white is more than 12 months ago. Now you'll notice you can do quite a few things with a very simple screener. First, you can monitor for relapse. If someone is receiving treatment and improving, you should see that black bar, the past month, go down and disappear altogether. But you'll notice between the 12-month and 15-month, they come up with some more past month problems. So that means sometime during that 3-month period, something else happened to them where they slid back a little bit. You also can track a gap, if there is one, between their lifetime problems that they've reported over these months. That number should never go down. They may change whether it's past month or not, but if they had 10 problems at the beginning, they're still going to have had 10 problems by the time they get to the 24-month screener. So here you'll notice they went from reporting 10 problems to reporting only 2. Well, that lets you know maybe you need to do some follow-up with them because they're not quite processing what they've gone through in quite the way that you'd want. By using the screener as a measure of change, you also can kind of predict some trajectories. So, for example, someone who has 3 or more lifetime problems, but no past month problems, so if we're looking at the numbers, it's 2s and 1s, but no 3s, that would be someone who in the past had a high severity problem that's now in early remission. Someone who has 3 or more lifetime problems, but no past year problems, so only 1s, but no 2s or 3s, is someone who at one point did have a high severity issue and is now in a more sustained remission. You can also use the short screener to help you with program planning and program improvement. Because this aids you in making referrals, you'll be able to identify what needs your clients have. So for example, if you determined that the majority of the students you worked with or the clients you worked with needed some kind of mental health treatment and you didn't have it available, you would know that you needed to start looking in your community for that resource. It also lets you compare staff or different sites, schools for example, on the extent to which expected diagnoses turn into an actual case. So for example, if 10% of your screeners come up with a need for a referral, but you only see 2% actually receive treatment, you can start looking into why that is and improving that. It also gives you an objective guidepost to compare performance between these sites and staff over time, so you can see if you're actually making strides in the areas that you'd like. Next, we're going to review the Wisconsin Family Ties GAIN-SS online. You'll be provided with more information if you're required to use this site. For now, just focus on getting a basic overview, and we'll provide you with some extra contact information at the end with questions. The website is www.wifamilyties.org. and it's very simple to use. The first screen will be a login. You select your district and county from a drop-down menu and enter a password. This will be provided to you at a later time. The only option that will come up says enter a survey, so you're pretty clear on what you need to click there. And then it brings you directly to an online version of the Gain Short Screener that looks just like the paper version. The very first thing that pops up is a disclosure that you should read and click OK. It just lets you know what the purpose is, which you all should know now from going through this training, and lets you know what you should do with that information. Once you hit OK, it brings up the screener and you're able to enter it. Now you'll notice it looks just like your paper version. And so if you are only going to be doing paper, no worries. It's just as easy online or paper, just fine. If you have to do it on the computer and you're not real tech savvy, not going to be an issue because it's very basic. So it provides all the same written material. It does enter the date on its own for you. And it has radio buttons on the side. You can only pick one response per question. And once you've done that, you hit submit and view results at the end, and it'll take you straight to some reports. Now you'll notice for question 5 and for 6, there's a little V, V1, V2, V3. These are just lines for you to enter in the client's verbatim response just like you would on paper. The only reason they're separated into different lines is because that's how long those could be. They only hold so many characters. You do not need 3 answers for number 5 though. The very first thing that pops up is the Gain SS summary report. It's automatically displayed. You don't need to run anything, generate anything, hit any buttons other than submit. This report does include client severity in each subscreener, so low, moderate, or high, a general recommendation for referral, and information on their scoring. So this is a sample of what that report looks like. This is actually Amber's summary report. So you'll notice at the top, the summary recommends it says high severity range in internalizing, low severity in externalizing, etc. Recommends a referral for mental health, substance abuse, and possible anger management. And then it actually shows a scoring profile at the bottom that provides you with past month, past year, and lifetime columns. Now we really care about that middle column for scoring, that past year. But those other 2 columns will come in real handy if you're trying to do more of that interpretation piece, monitoring for change, looking at your school or your agency's productivity with these kinds of clients. So that's really what that is there for. Now you'll notice there's a gray bar in there that says, what does this mean? If you click that, it reminds you what a moderate or high score in each of those subscreeners is talking about, what it indicates to you. Now the full report, which if you look up in the corner, upper right-hand corner, it says full report. If you click on that, that generates that full Gain SS report. And it has the same features in terms of a summary, scoring, but it also includes a little bit more detail. And this is what that looks like. Again, it has the date that XPID or client ID is generated automatically. And this has more of a narrative. So it says this client is this age, this gender, they completed the screener on this date, they endorsed this many symptoms, and then it actually breaks down by screener which symptoms they endorsed and for what time period. If you have questions about use of this online portion or anything else related to this training, you can contact the people listed on this site. Please note, for general GAIN information, you can contact Heather or I at gaininfo@chestnut.org. For information about the GAIN SS in Wisconsin or specific information about this training, please contact Susan Endress. And for information on informed consent or privacy, please contact Nick Dibble or John Humphreys.